Right, here we go then, folks. Here he is, the latest wonderful action figure pre-order to arrive at the MoDXtra Games and Collectibles Tower's doorstep. It is, of course, as you can see, the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse Bane, what is described on their website as a MegaFig, and that, folks, is an accurate statement because this box is massive. Regular viewers may have noticed that I'm not in my usual location. It's not my standard grey tablecloth. I've had to jerry-rig up a... Is it jerry-rig or jury-rig? Anyway, I put together a makeshift overhead camera rig in order to try and better accommodate the larger size of this box, and even then I've still not managed to fit it all in. So it's huge, but you know what? I'll take it, absolutely. It should be a MegaFig, because Bane is a big, drug-induced, muscle-bound, hulking beast of a murderous man, and so, yeah, that works. It fits. So very pleased, once again, to see that Toddy Boy is starting to churn out some more kind of classic look, comic book accurate figures. I've mentioned this before. I'm very selective about my DC Multiverse purchases because I tend to like the stuff that either comes from storylines that are significant and resonate with me because I read them, or they're, you know, the well-known and large storylines, or just generally are the classic look, you know, the classic look comic book uniform. And this particular figure, this Bane, meets both of those criteria because it comes from the Knightfall storyline in the mid-90s, which was a huge storyline at the kind of height of my teenage comic book reading, certainly my superhero comic book reading time before I started to move into some more mature titles. And it's also largely the same uniform that Bane has had you know, throughout his whole comic book lifetime, every narrative, he's basically in his black jumpsuit with his big luchador mask on. So yeah, this is working for me. So as far as the packaging goes, it's the standard McFarlane DC Multiverse packaging. We've got the black, white, and blue kind of motif color scheme there with the logo, the name of the figure, the window at the front of the box showing off the goodies inside. One of the sides is the standard black, completely concealed side with the character's name on it. And the other side is the partial window side, so you can have a look at the figure, you know, from the side, if that's what you want to do, I suppose. Then the back, yeah, big fan of the back here. So that's a tremendous piece of Bane artwork that they've selected here. I think that's the same artwork as on the trading card that comes inside. Yeah, it looks like it is. That's from a cover, I want to say Secret 6. I'm pretty sure that was a Secret 6 cover from around the, in the 30s somewhere, an issue in the 30s somewhere. A tremendous series written by Gail Simone. In fact, I would highly recommend folks out there, if you've not read Secret 6 or its predecessor, the Villains United miniseries. Very, very good. Great storyline that takes some obscure DC characters. In fact, Todd, if you're watching, because obviously Todd McFarlane watches my content, I would love to see a Secret 6 Catman. That would be great. And a classic Deadshot while you're in the market. You know what I mean? So put that one on your list, please, Toddy Boy. But here we go. Yeah, so that artwork is from a Secret 6 cover, and it speaks to the character, doesn't it? That kind of drug-induced, the venom pumping through his veins that turns him, that pumps up his muscular, gives him super strength, and turns him into a raving, murderous lunatic. I think that's a tremendous piece of artwork. Great choice there, Team McFarlane. And then the bottom, is just all the legal bollocks and everything, so that's that. So let's make an attempt to get this open on screen. I'm going to have to turn him sideways. I've popped the tape on the top here already, just to expedite things. So we'll slide that out there and pull the figure out like this. And then on the backing card... Oh, the backing card's like proper jammed in there. Hang on. There we go, success. And the backing card's got the trading card and the standard DC Multiverse foot stand there. So we'll get that open in a second, but here's the figure. Oh man, it's tie wraps again. It's tie wraps with McFarlane. It's sellotape with bloody Hasbro. Just the two banes of my existence. The sellotape I can't get because I've got no fingernails, and the tie wraps. Well, I'm going to have to get scissors on that. Right, I'll be back in just a moment. All right, there we go. Scissors did the trick. So let's get this guy out of here. I can already feel... Oh, I hate that noise. I can already feel a fair bit of weight and heft on this guy. And a very noisy blister pack experience, though. Come on, Bane. Out you come. Oh, have I missed the tie wrap? Is that why he's not coming? How about Bane? There we are. Here he is. Whew, right, there we go. There's Bane out the packet, all ready to be played with, and his footstand and his trading card. So, as usual, folks, I'm going to go away, have a good play with Bane. Going to get him posed up. I can see some Azrael in Batman armor and some Batman displays going on. I wonder if he can hold Batman over his head or against his knee. Ooh, I have to take a look at that. But there's the figure out the box. I'll be moving into the review section of the video, which for me will be in a couple of days' time, but for you, you'll be getting it in 3, 2, 1. And here he is. Here's Bane, the Bane MegaFig by McFarlane Toys from the DC Multiverse line. Out the packaging. It's been a couple of days, as usual, since I've done the unboxing section of the video that you've just watched. I've been away, I've had a play, I've been posing him up. He's been hanging out with my Azrael Batman armor figure that I received just a couple of weeks back in a few poses and whatnot. Even had a little go at the old classic Knightfall, you know, Batman above his head, dropping him across his knee. Didn't go as well as intended, but I'll talk about that when I get to the articulation point of the review, because yes, this is the review section of the video now. I mean, holy moly, look at look how he's filling my lightbox up. The guy's massive, and we'll talk about that in a sec as well. So if you're new around these parts, just a quick rundown as to how a MoDXtra Games and Collectibles review works. I follow a very simple structure that I call the 3 A's. First A is the aesthetic. We're going to talk about how the Bane MegaFig looks. Paint apps, textures, sculpting, etc., get into all that. Then on to the second A, which is articulation. How does he feel? How does he move? How posable is the Bane MegaFig? And then finally, the third A is accessories stroke added value. What's all the extra goodies? What's the stuff that makes this worth the cash price that you pay for him? And with all that said and done, hopefully I'll have provided enough thoughts that if you're thinking about picking up one of these big guys for yourself, then I'll help you make your mind up. So let's not dilly-dally around. Let's get into it and let's talk about Bane's aesthetic. Okay then, so I brought Bane a little bit nearer to the camera so that we could take a closer look at the finer detail, some of the aesthetic qualities of this figure, because frankly folks, McFarlane, the sculpting quality is always high quality, and Bane is no different. There is loads to love aesthetically about this figure. Like the luchador face mask, look at the texture in the face mask there, and down these leathery straps, you get this really leathery vibe from them. Can you see that there? Awesome, really excellent fine detail. Lovely paint apps as well around these straps and belts. Lots of lovely fine detail there. Lots of texture as well within the figure, like the belt looks, you know, the metallic paint job on that looks really suitably metallic-y. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's got that metallic-y vibe to it, and then you can see in the trousers as well, that kind of fabric texture there with the creases and the seams and the folds. Got his little combat pants pocket there on the side as well. Just loads of little bits of fine detail, and the boots too. Bane's been shopping down the plus size army surplus stores apparently, but you got all that fine detail in the laces. Look at the knot, the laces knot that's tied up at the top there and stuff. Lots of lovely little fine detail aesthetic touches that really make this figure stand out. The least of which is the musculature. I mean, he really is a big, imposing, hulking figure, and you got these massive muscles, and you can see all these kind of skin tones. There's a wash over that as well, giving him his kind of South American tan, which I appreciate. Very, very accurate to the character. And of course, those big, massive muscles with all the bulging biceps and veins and everything are all aspects of, you know, key characteristics of what you associate with Bane as a comic book character, because that's what he's all about. He's pumping his venom. Speaking of which, the venom, we've got his little venom unit here on his back again. The paint application on there is really top notch. Really, I mean, it just looks like it's a metal set of metal canisters, which is absolutely spot on. Then the really luminous green colour of the liquid piping through these tubes going into these little inlets on his head and on his arm there. Really appreciate that. One small criticism aesthetically. One of my Venom tubes, as you can see here, got a little dinged up in the packaging. I don't know if that was me when I unpacked him or not, but it's all a bit scratched up and dinged up. I don't mind that too much, to be fair, but it's just one of those things, isn't it? That could be a little bit of an annoyance that once you notice it, you can't stop noticing it and gets gets on your nerves, but overall, this metallic canister and these luminous green pipes, really adds a splash of colour, really adds some finer detail, and is, of course, very true to the storyline, the narrative that the Bane character... Oh, I meant to go that way. To the narrative that the Bane character is all about, this super serum thing that he pumps into himself using his little injector unit here on his arm. That's a nice little touch as well. Again, in the metallic paintwork, got the nice red button there. These are pretty neat and tidy paint apps for McFarlane. They can be a bit loosey-goosey around the edges. For example, I don't know if you can see the bottom of the neckline there, the seam on his luchador mask is not fully painted around the front there. So yeah, there are a few little tidbits that are a bit rough around the edges. That's quite kind of typical of paint applications from McFarlane Toys, I'm sorry to say, but vastly outweighed by the other aesthetic qualities of the figure. Because look at him, everything, the story, I go on about this all the time in my video reviews. The aesthetic of the character tells the story. He's big, he's imposing, he's menacing looking. He's got the musculature and the kind of, I don't know what you call it, like the homunculus, horrific almost. It's like an absolute horror show how big and muscular he is. With the finer detail and the texture stuff. They really nailed the texture stuff at McFarlane Toys. I've been very much enjoying the way that Bane engages with the eye. He's really, really awesome. McFarlane Toys have also really nailed the size and shape and dimensions of the figure. It was absolutely the right choice to make it a MegaFig. Charge those extra couple of quid and make him a big hulking beast of a figure. I mean, he's got some heft to him. He's not light comparable to other figures of this nature, and he should be as well. That three-dimensional realization of this two-dimensional comic book character that's really violent and threatening and just really formidable. It's the guy who took down Bruce Wayne. Not many folks can claim that. That's not a badge many characters can wear, but Bane can wear that. So just the sort of raw violence of the character is really being sold by the way they've sculpted the shape and made him taller and just really massive and imposing. I love it. The hand sculpt as well really contributes to that story. This villainous kind of claw shape, this gripping claw shape that they've got the hands in, just really sells that narrative of the character. Like in my head canon, I really feel like he's just about to, just grab someone by the head violently and squash it like a grape, and just watch their eyeballs pop out the sockets and squirt all over his chest, and then just wipe it off and go for lunch kind of thing, not even give it a second thought. So just these little touches, like the way they've sculpted the hand, doing that really menacing claw there, just really adds to the violent and threatening look and feel of the figure, which absolutely he is. That's what he is. That's, they've really sold the those key characteristics of this big beastly bloke, this big beastly villain to us, and I really appreciate that. I'm raving about it, but it's not all roses, of course. I mentioned the paint application that I noticed around the neckline of his mask, but also some other little touches like the blacks, the shades of blacks here from the torso to the classic McFarlane nappy groin area to the trouser legs are all a bit different. And I certainly here, these two parts are the same trouser piece. It kind of stands out to me sometimes that they're two different sort of shades of black, which is a little bit annoying. Also, aesthetically, while I love these hands to some degree, it does limit your kind of display options, that you're only really getting Bane into a very precise and very specific selection of poses, and I'll talk about articulation in more detail in a second. But aesthetically, in terms of what catches your eye, I'd have liked maybe some hand swaps with some fists, perhaps, to just open up the aesthetic options in terms of what you're visually doing with the character when it comes to displaying him, photographing him, etc., etc. So yeah, I'm raving about it, but it's not all roses. However, overall, aesthetically speaking, in terms of the first A category, I've got to give the Bane figure by McFarlane Toys a big old thumbs up. I think he looks great. Been having lots of fun playing around with posing him within the limits of the articulation, which I'll get to, but just everything I think about and associate the aspects of this character that I want in the action figure version of him, they've really nailed. They've really got it absolutely spot on, with just a few of those little rough around the edges bits, like the quality control around the different fabric colours and the odd sloppy paint app, and yeah, this guy would be like in the mega heights for me. But overall, yeah, super pleased, really happy with the figure. He's just everything I want from my nostalgic memories of the character when I read the comic books in the 90s. So there's the aesthetic. Let's now talk about the articulation and have a little bit of elaboration on some of which I've alluded to with regards to articulation. So starting up top then with the head, and basically you don't have a lot of options with the head. There's no up, barely any down, and the side to side is very restricted. I don't know if it's because of the tubes and piping that's attached to the back of his skull that's restricting that, or the way this shoulder sculpt, this big hulking kind of muscular neck shoulder sculpt thing is, but you're really very limited. It's just a small amount, comparable to other action figures, of course, of left and right. You're certainly not getting a very good full over-the-shoulder look, I don't think. I think it looks a bit kind of uncomfortable and odd, especially when we expose just a kind of painted neck piece underneath. So yeah, the head articulation is a bit restricted, a bit gummy, and not really fully up to scratch. Oh hey, I've just noticed something actually that I hadn't clocked before. I wonder if that's intentional. These little blobs are kind of like leaking venom out that pipe, these little green bits that are on it, or whether that's just a bit of a blobby paint app mistake, I don't know, but I kind of like it. It kind of looks like there's a little bit leaking, which works. Anyway, I've done aesthetic. Let's stick with articulation. Into the shoulders then, we've got no butterfly joint, and it really is just up to a T like that, and then the swivel joint in the arm allowing you the full 360. It's okay, it's decent enough. I've become kind of accustomed of late to having the butterfly joints to open up my posing options, but it's not too bad. The hinge in there is all right. It's decent enough. This one on this side's a bit crunchy, but that's all fine. But I mean, how much can you do, really? I suppose it's an engineering problem there with the kind of bulk, the muscular bulk of the figure is probably causing some problems with terms of articulating. No swivel here at the bicep and tricep, which I'm a bit disappointed at, and the elbow is just a single pin joint here, and as you can see, you can sort of straighten it out there like that, but there's not. That's as far up as you can get it. There's not a great deal of movement there. Very limited. Again, I think it might be an engineering problem in terms of articulation because of the size of this bicep and tricep, the muscles at the top here. But yeah, not a lot of movement. There is a bit of swivel in there though, which does add to your options a little bit. The hands are on the standard McFarlane ball joint. You've got a hinge in and out there. A bit loose on this wrist actually, and then the ball joint, which allows you a full swivel, which adds a bit of range of motion in this area here, which is great, other than the fact that the rest of the arm's articulation doesn't really allow you to do a great deal with that. So, what are you going to do? There's a joint here just under the belt, which gives you a little bit of ab crunch, not a great deal, a tiny bit of movement there, but it gives you definitely the left and right swivel on it. I might have liked a little bit more ab crunch in the Bane figure for some of the stuff that I wanted to try and do with him when I was taking photos the other day, but just couldn't, but I could definitely do a bit there. And because of the way they've kind of moulded the vest right down into that join down there, it's actually looking pretty good when you turn him side by side. No unsightly gaps or anything, which is nice. I've noticed that with McFarlane before. Sometimes you get these little holes that turn up when you start swiveling him around. But no real ab crunch. Then it's the standard McFarlane nappy here. You've got a fairly decent forward. It's all right, I suppose. A bit of back there, out to the side, up to here, which is okay. And a tiny bit of swivel, as you can see in the top there, which compensates a little bit for the fact that there's a lack of a thigh cut and a swivel in the top of the thigh here, but it's not tremendous, but at least there's some options, so if you want to get your Bane, doing the splits, you can. Double knee. Oh, a bit crunchy on that, but you can get that up to about there, which is all right. One thing about the knee I noticed, actually, which I quite appreciate, is they put these little kind of sewn-on patches. Over the top there to disguise some of the join, which is nice, but it also looks like he's just kind of put some extra padding on his knees for knee protection, which is good. No cut at the top of the boot, so no swivel in there. And then the feet, we've got the forward and back hinge, bit of a rocker. Not the standard McFarlane ball joint, actually, incidentally, I noticed on that. I don't know if that's got something to do with the heft and the size of the figure, whether the ball joint just wasn't going to cut it this time around. And as with all McFarlane figures, Bane can curl his toes. So yeah, Articulation, bit disappointed if I'm being perfectly honest with the range of Articulation. When doing a little bit of photography with him the other day and having a play, there was some stuff I was trying to do with him and some sort of poses and interaction with other figures. That was one of the key elements there, how I wanted to have him interacting with some of my other figures. It just wasn't possible. I just couldn't get it to work, and even with a bit of clever sort of camera angle trickery, it wasn't there, which is a disappointment. I do have to judge it by the McFarlane Toys way to some degree. I've said this before about McFarlane Toys. I've learned to accept that these are more kind of statue-esque display figures with a bit of action figure kind of articulation thrown in for funsies than they are action figures with a more statuesque aesthetic, if that makes some kind of sense. I think you'll get where I'm coming from on that. But even by that standard, this Articulation doesn't meet up to what we've seen with other McFarlane figures. And they've got a little bit better of late, although I would still like to start seeing a little bit more swivel thigh cuts, better arm stuff going on. It just, yeah, they're very statuesque figures. But as a display piece, which I absolutely will be using him as, the Articulation is enough that I can get him into some interesting looking poses that align with that narrative I was mentioning earlier of a big, villainous, imposing, violent, threatening kind of dude. I can get that. I can get him there. It just, if you want something to do more ambitious kind of diorama stuff or more ambitious photography with, you're going to struggle unless you get super creative. So the Articulation's a little bit on the thumbs down side, I'm sorry to say. Even by McFarlane Toys standard, it's lesser than some of the other stuff I've picked up recently, which is a shame. Okay, well, there we go. There's Articulation. Let's now talk about the added value. What are the accessories like with Bane? And this is a short section of the review video because basically with Bane, you get the trading card and the DC Multiverse foot stand, and that's it. The artwork on the trading card's pretty sweet. I mentioned it is the same as on the back of the box. The foot stands, I think every action figure nowadays should come with a foot stand, so I always appreciate that aspect of the McFarlane Toys, that they give you the foot stand. It definitely helps out, especially with a very top-heavy figure like Bane. Just gives him that little bit of extra stability on the shelf, so I'm definitely into that. But the trading cards, yeah, I could take or leave them. I'm quite indifferent about them, really. They just keep gathering up in a little trading card binder I've got. But I don't know, if you're not familiar with the character, it's got some lore on the back, but I don't imagine anyone would be buying the Bane figure if they didn't already know some of this stuff about him. So, yeah, I don't know. The added value is a bit on the downside. Another thumbs down, I think, maybe. I'm sorry to report. Mostly what I would have liked is some swappable hands. I mentioned before, some fists would have been absolutely spot on. And for comparison then, here we go. We have the Bane next to the recent Azrael Batman armor figure that I picked up. You can really see the size and shape difference in those two figures, what makes Bane a MegaFig and Azrael there as a standard mainline figure. Just really super tall, super broad by comparison. Obviously a great pairing, this pair, for creating displays for a storyline that I have very fond, warm, nostalgic memories about, that I read as a young teenager. So yeah, there you go. There's Bane and Azrael. Staying on the Batman theme, here is the Batman Detective Comics 1000, the grey and blue edition next to Bane, along with his really freakishly large feet and his strange wrists. The size difference is even more significant between these two here, as you can see. Bane just really towers over the Bruce Wayne Batman here. I'd be interested to see how this one pairs up with the Jim Lee version of Batman that they've just recently advertised on their Instagram, actually. Just grab one of my other bigger McFarlane figures here, the Lobo that I grabbed a little while back. This is a mainline figure, actually, that I spent, normal standard mainline price on, and he's not looking that much shorter by comparison as I put the two of them next to each other here, although he's clearly not as big and hefty, although he has got some weight to him, Lobo, but there you go, there's a comparison between these two. And finally, here is Bane crushing a Marvel Legends Everett Ross's head like a grape before he goes to lunch, because Everett Ross was talking some smack earlier on about McFarlane Toys Articulation compared to Hasbro Articulation. And you know what? While he may have been right, Bane took exception. And here we are then, here's Bane going round on the turntable. This is the pose that I've had him in on the shelf. I'm going for a replication of one of the Knightfall issue covers. I forget which one specifically. If I track it down when I edit the video, I'll flash it up on screen here now. But the one with the freakishly abnormal muscles that looks even weirder, even beyond that which your suspension of comic book disbelief because with a venom-induced violent character will go. But anyway, that's what I was doing with it. And overall, I'm happy. I'm really pleased with the figure, actually. He looks incredible. Such an eye-catching, striking figure. An incredible shelf presence, which really, is what I was looking for with the Bane. He is 100% a display piece. That same problem that I had with McFarlane over and over and over again has reared its ugly head with Bane. Even more so, in fact, because the articulation is even more limited compared to other recent figures I've picked up, in that it's a very statuesque figure with some articulation points that are action figure-like rather than being an actual action figure in the way I would experience with the Hasbro lines that I collect, for example. But that's okay. I've come to some space of acceptance on that, and I fully intend on using him as a display piece. You'll notice if you're a regular around here that I don't do my little 1-minute showcases on the McFarlane figures because I don't really see them as hugely posable to put in lots of different poses. I see them as kind of, right, get your display, boom, there they are. I love DC. Here we go, kind of thing. So, yeah. So if you are looking for something with more articulation, then this Bane's possibly not for you. Broadly speaking, I'm not sure McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse is for you, but if you're looking for something with more articulation, this isn't for you. But if you're looking for a really striking display piece, then yeah, absolutely, because there's lots to love. There's certainly aesthetically lots to love about the figure. So overall, I'm giving it a thumbs up and saying I'd recommend this figure. If you're a fan of 90s Batman stuff, if you read Knightfall when you were a teenager like me and you've got nostalgic memories of that time period, if you just love the Bane character because he's all huge and villainous and imposing, then he's got all that going on. The figure really tells a story. The attention to detail is top notch. It's just not really an action figure, and that's the same feedback I have every time I review a McFarlane Toys figure. So if you're ready, willing and able to accept that, like I've become, then that's cool, that's fine. So there we are. All right, folks, well, that brings me to the end of my Bane review. Of course, if you've enjoyed the video today, then please do take a minute to give me a thumbs up down below, like the vid, and if you're not already subscribed to the channel, then please do so. We cover all sorts of nerdy, collectible, and gaming-related content here. I'm a huge man-child, living in my man cave, filling my house with loads of plastic crap, and I like to make videos about it. So if you're into comic books, action figures, trading cards, board games, then this is possibly the channel for you. So consider subscribing and joining me here as part of the MoDXtra Games and Collectibles community. Otherwise, thanks so very much for taking the time to watch my video today. I hope you have a tremendous day, and I'll catch you again around these parts sometime soon. All right, well, see you later, folks.